last week we had a controversial quote from Monty Williams, and this week we have a controversial decision by Monty Williams, and that decision was to bring Jaden Ivey off the bench. It's only preseason, a time where teams figure out lineups and rotations, so maybe we can all just chill. But I'll be honest, I don't hate the move at all for him to bring Jaden Ivey off the bench. I think this is, right now, is the perfect role for Jaden Ivey. I think it's the best way for him to grow. I know we all want to see him play off of Cade Cunningham. We will do that. I don't – as long as he still plays close to 30 minutes per game, it's not an issue for me with Jaden Ivey. You've heard me talk on this podcast where I feel like sometimes he would try to play too much hero ball and try to take the defense on his own. He did have 5 turnovers in the last game, and we did see him try to rush things a little bit. I think playing next alongside someone like Monte Morris off the bench who can control the pace, get him to slow things down, it's going to be better growth for Jaden Ivey. But what are your thoughts of him coming off the bench for the Detroit Pistons?
My initial reaction before I heard Monty Williams talk to the media was I was surprised by it. But then he added context to it, saying, hey, I don't want to throw out 5 young guys onto the basketball on a basketball floor without a veteran out there. And that veteran happened to be Alec Burks. So I was like, okay, he added some context to it. I don't think he's trying to send a message to Jaden Ivey, because I have seen some Pistons fans talk about that. Like maybe he's sending a message because Jaden Ivey isn't a good defender. I don't think it's that. I think in the preseason, you get the opportunity to run sets and run starting lineups, rotations that you don't get to do in the regular season, because you're trying to win basketball games. Every team in the NBA is trying to win basketball games in the beginning of the year. They're not, trying to tank or, we're gonna try this experiment lineup down the stretch in the third quarter. I think Monty is seeing if Jaden Ivey can fit off that bench, and he's done a really good job the first 2 preseason games, just instant offense, and he's trying on defense. Not to saying that he's just out there. He's not pulling a Zion. I don't know if you've watched Zion lately. He's just letting guys blow right by him and not even like putting a hand up or anything. He's actually trying out there. It's just interesting to me that you wouldn't want him and Cade to try to build that chemistry. But again, it is the preseason. Maybe they can build that chemistry to start the season, and maybe, they're in practice, they're on the same team. Who knows? I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. I know some people, Pistons fans on Twitter just lost their shit. Like Pistons Twitter has just been so toxic.
It's been fun.
Fun. Between Pistons Twitter, Facebook groups, man, I've never seen Pistons fans so on edge. Like, I know we've lost a lot, but some of the stuff that is just coming out of Pistons fans' mouth, man, like I can't even reply to half of it because it's just off the wall in left field.
I'm surprised though that you don't think it's Monty Williams sending a message to Jaden Ivey, because I felt like over the last few seasons, a lot of these young players have gotten a lot of opportunity that they didn't have to earn. And it really felt like they weren't being held accountable. So I like that Monty Williams is coming in and holding these guys accountable. And he's been preaching defense. And that's something you and I have talked about from Jaden Ivey pretty much since we started this podcast, that's going to be the evolution of him as a player is, can he become an elite 2-way player? He has all the athletic tools to do it, but he just hasn't figured that side of the ball out yet. So I do think it is a message for Monty Williams where, yeah, I'm still going to play you because you're too talented for me not to play you, but you haven't earned the right to start on my team because that side of the ball is not good. And I can't have you out there affecting things. But if I have you coming off the bench, there is certain situations where I can use you and have you thrive in them where it doesn't hurt us defensively. And even in today's NBA, I don't think defense it is still kind of funny to me that a coach will say, like, we're going to preach defense because the offense, the NBA today is all about offense. It's all about just outscoring someone. You want to get a few stops, but it's not like the going to work Pistons where you can clamp down defensively and you can really stop a team on that side of the ball. That type of defense it does not exist in today's NBA. But again, I do think it is Monty Williams sending a message to Jaden Ivey. Like, what? And you're right, he is showing the effort. But once you get better on this side of the ball, I'm going to give you the honor of starting for my team again, and I'm going to throw you back out with them.
You know what it reminds me of a little bit? Do you remember the summer? And I know this is completely off topic. Different coach, different regime. You remember when the Pistons wanted to extend KCP?
Yep.
And he went to the Lakers. We trade Marcus Morris for Avery Bradley from the Celtics. That same summer, we draft Luke Kennard. And who starts? Avery Bradley. Who sucked? Avery Bradley. Who did the Pistons trade? Avery Bradley. Luke Kennard started in those games because he was showing Van Gundy at the time, I can put it together offensively. Now, defensively, Luke Kennard, I think we can all agree, wasn't terrible, but he was average at best. And the reason why I bring that up is there could be a situation where the shooting guard on this team could either be Alec Burks or Joe Harris, and Ivy has to earn his way into that starting rotation. I don't know if that's the case. I've been trying to think, back in like this Pistons history of having a talented player that didn't get that starting minutes. Now, obviously, the Pistons last year were a rebuilding team, and Dwayne Casey was just throwing all those young guys out there just to get reps. I don't really think he was really worried about win totals or anything like that. But I think to your point, Monty has preached defense since he's come to Detroit. And not to say that Jaden Ivey's a lockdown defender. He's not a bad defender. But there are times where he does just get attacked. Like the Suns were attacking him like crazy in the first preseason game because they know he's not a good defender. I don't know. It's hard because offensively it's there. But to your point, you said he's trying to send a message. Well, it seems like that message is just to Jaden Ivey. I could argue that message should be sent to Isaiah Stewart too. Because Isaiah Stewart, so far in the preseason, has been getting cooked. If you're going to send that's why I don't think it's a message, directed towards Jaden Ivey. I think he's just trying to see what lineups work, because if that message was the case, Isaiah Stewart would be on the bench. I know we don't have a lot of depth at power forward, but if you're trying to send a message to your young players that if you want to play, I need it on the defensive end and defensive and offensive, then Isaiah Stewart would probably be coming off the bench.
Yeah, but I mean, even with Isaiah Stewart, the effort and the hustle is always there. He's always 100 when he's on the floor. And he has shown, even in this preseason, he's had better defensive moments than Jaden Ivey. I thought you were going to talk about if he was sending a message to Jaden Ivey, why are you playing Bojan, who he gets cooked defensively all the time. And my argument would have been that, well, Bojan is such a good offensive player that it actually does outweigh. I don't think Jaden Ivey is that offensive on that level yet offensively, where you're like, we got to have him out on the floor at all times because his offense is just so good. It outweighs the bad defense. But this is what I was thinking too. As soon as he started to come off the bench, I started thinking, like, what if Asar Thompson takes a leap as a shooter and as an offensive player, where the Pistons start to think, you know what? He could be our second option offensively. The playmaking's there. The handle's there. He can drive. He can finish at the rim. Now the shooting is finally getting there, and it makes Jaden Ivey expendable. Do you think if Asar Thompson's offense takes the leap his rookie year, where they start to think, all right, he could be the number 2 off of Cade, that they might look to try to trade Jaden Ivey while his value is still high?
I love you. I really do, but this is going to sound really mean. No. Asar's offensive game, in my opinion, isn't going to take the leap that you just mentioned. I think he can take strides in getting better, of being a better corner 3-point shooter. But Jaden Ivey, I think the reason why I just thought of another reason why he's not starting. I'll ask you this question. It's a rhetorical question. What does Asar Thompson and Jaden Ivey have in common from a skill set wise?
I would say from a skill set, I mean, I would say the thing that they both have in common is just the athleticism and the
Okay.
ability to drive and get to the rim. I would say they both have that in their bag.
So why would you want both of those guys on the court at the same time when they both do the same thing? Now,
Yeah,
Ivy is a better shooter from the outside. We can both agree there. I think that could be the reason why Monty isn't starting him. But like I said, I am just nitpicking. I'm trying to figure it out because if the message is defense, then the message is inconsistent, as True Teller said in the chat, right? I think what they have in common is they're athletically gifted, they flourish in transition, and they're very fast players. But like I can't figure it out now. If you want to say we want to have an instant spark plug off the bench, sure. But what happens when Monte Morris comes back?
I think Monte and Jaden Ivey are going to be fine. I think they're going to be great off the bench together. I think that's a neat little duo off the bench that can make some strides against other second units. I don't know, man. I think there's a part of me where if Ivy doesn't put it together defensively, it's just he might be the odd man out of the core. That's just I don't know why I think that. It just seems like his game can be replicated by a handful of other people in the league. Like we just saw Marcus Sasser. I know he's a little bit shorter than Jaden Ivey, but he can get to the rim. He already looks like he's a better shooter than Jaden Ivey, and he gets after it defensively. So I'm wondering,
Yeah.
and then Asar, he's already leaps and bounds ahead of Jaden Ivey on the defensive side. He gives you better size on the perimeter. He's another playmaker himself. You can rely on him now to bring the ball up the floor. The only thing missing is a consistent three-point shot, but he can attack the rim and honestly finish better than Jaden Ivey. It just, to me, it feels like him coming off the bench is more writing on the wall that his time in Detroit might be shorter than other people's. And I hate to have a hot take like that because I love Jaden Ivey and I hope he is here for a long time. And I want him and Cade to gel in the backcourt. But there's just a part of me where it's like, man, he might be the most expendable, especially if Asar Thompson just starts taking some leaps offensively, which I think he will as the season progresses. I think because he's such a hard worker and he's dedicated to his craft. Not saying Jaden Ivey isn't, but Jaden Ivey is one of those players where all the talent in the world, it feels like he could just get stuck playing one way and never grow from it. And I don't know. Those are my thoughts on Jaden Ivey coming off the bench.
Here's the thing. You did this last year a lot with Sadiq Bey,
Yeah.
where I'm starting to see a pattern. I think Jaden Ivey is getting tough love from Monty Williams. And I was thinking back because Jaden Ivey had a really interesting quote media day saying that he's just so blessed to have him as a coach. And it's a privilege to learn from him. I think Monty is giving him special attention. And what I mean by that is I think Monty kind of views him in the same light as Jalen Duren. I'll explain. I
Okay.
think Jaden Ivey is just such a special player and a special athlete. One of those players that I think a lot of teams would kill to have. I think him coming off the bench really isn't a big deal. If that is his role, I don't really see that as a big deal. But I don't think the Pistons are going to move off of him. If I had to pick a core player that would get traded, it would probably be Killian Hayes before Jaden Ivey, even though Killian Hayes is playing phenomenally right now. Monty Williams' comments about Killian were kind of alarming, in a good way though, not in a bad way. But I think the Pistons view Jaden Ivey as a key piece. Now it's up to Monty Williams to put him in the best position to succeed, and I think he will. I think him coming off the bench is maybe it's a learning experience for him because he's always been the best player. He's always been that number one guy. again, it's preseason. We could be overreacting, and like maybe a month from now, Jaden Ivey starting, and we just look like complete jackasses, and people in the comments just say, "Man, you guys are so fucking dumb."